to be live momentarily. And we're live, and welcome again, everyone, to my channel for another Deconversion Stories. Today's feature is Apetivist, who lives very close to Aaron Ra, as I found out early today.
Yes.
And generally, what we do here is we discuss our stories on our paths away from faith or belief systems, whether they're religious or wooey or otherwise. So basically what I want to know is how you left your belief system behind and why you did, and some of the results of your leaving your faith, like family members and stuff like that, like we were talking a little bit beforehand. So I'll let you take it away, and I'll just pipe in here and there.
Right. Well, that's a really very good questions. Thanks everyone for watching. And Neil and I, we both share. I just want to point this out. We both share the same vision of reaching people on the fence, and basically asking them to use critical thinking and skepticism and to question their beliefs and to see whether or not they line up with reality. But yeah, I was, well, I was a Christian for 23 years, Southern Baptist, and raised obviously to believe that, everything in the Bible is 100% literally true. And I was a cross between, I don't know, every once in a while I would jump from Calvinism, and then I would see some problems with it. Then I would jump to Arminianism. So it got to the point where that was not the reason why I left, but it was certainly an aspect of that started me to question certain things. But the primary thing that I did was when I was 7. Well, I walked the aisle when I was 11 years old, and I did the sinner prayer, and then I got baptized. And when I was 17, I got involved. Well, I was in the martial arts since I was 9, but I got involved in a martial arts evangelical demonstration team.
That's actually a thing?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. And we were, I can't say the name, because if I said the name, most people would know who I am.
Right. Okay. That's fine.
Yeah. And I just try to keep, but primarily what I did was I got under the influence of this particular pastor who had me read all different types of books on apologetics, like Josh McDowell and so forth. And by the time I finished reading those, I said, oh man, I need to go into the ministry. This stuff is more real than I thought it would ever be. And so there I began. And I dedicated myself to participating in the ministry, from teaching teens to assisting in homeless shelters, and of course doing street evangelization, and occasionally teaching Bible classes or holding Bible classes with adults. And then after several years, I moved into an assistant / associate pastor position in a Baptist church. And in order to become a more knowledgeable and prepared Christian, I decided to take theology and apologetic courses from Liberty University.
Wow.
And my first year was going quite well. I was doing everything required, doing well on all my tests, and just, acing things, and really absorbing all the information. And of course, I thought that it had lots of merit to it. But something happened to me. I just, I just started wondering, but in particular to the problem of evil and the problem of divine hiddenness. I began asking further questions because I thought that the questions that were being supplied to me were rather weak. I mean, not the questions, the answers. And so I took a personal venture to ask my professors and fellow ministers and other people that were involved in, developing their understanding of theology, what they thought about the problems that are inherent in the problem of evil and also the issue of divine hiddenness.
Right.
And I got really inadequate answers, and it really upset me, particularly so that I was being told that I should basically just have faith, that not everything can be understood. And something just clicked in me. It just said, that's just not right. That's just not even sufficient. I had a questioning mind, even though I was raised to be a fundamentalist. I still had a questioning mind. At least I was curious, that is.
Which is actually kind of a rarity, if you ask me, for some people.
Well, yes, I was kind of curious, but the problem is, also I squashed most of my curiosity, and others around me did, because evolution and science and things like that were tools of the devil designed to lure people away from belief in Christ. So I began looking at secular philosophers, secretly ordering books and through catalogs, and doing reading, because let's keep in mind, this was 30 years ago. So this was before the internet. I had to do everything the long and hard way, in particular, going from library to library and seeking out books and bookstores and everything else. And so by the time I researched and I got brave enough to look at what free thinkers and atheists would say in regards to these issues, and I was completely convinced. It didn't take me long. It was into my second year at Liberty University that I realized that the Christian God was logically inconsistent, and I just said, man, not only that, but after really thinking deeply about the implications of Christianity, from heaven to hell to damnation to salvation by grace and vicarious redemption, human sacrifice, I just said, man, this just can't be true. And that's when I left. I left the ministry, and nobody asked me why. In fact,
really?
Well, basically, they told me, well, they didn't ask me, well, okay, like this, why are you leaving? Because I no longer believe in God. And they didn't say why, or they didn't say what's wrong with it, or in other words, it was the immediate reaction from most of the people around me was you just want to sin.
Yeah, very common.
You just hate God. Something's happened to you. What's happened to you? The devil has gotten into your mind. So it's, in other words, it can't possibly be that there is something doctrinally incorrect about Christianity. It had to be me. It had to be
some other influence. Yeah.
And so I left and joined the Army because I had no life experience aside from doing martial arts. And all I knew was Christianity and the martial arts. So I joined U.S. Army and was in for 6 years. And during that time, I did a lot of research and study and advanced in my education through correspondence courses. And then eventually when I got out, I continued my college. And I ended up owning 4 martial arts schools,
Wow.
operating them. And of course, I also became involved in the electronics industry. And that's how I made my living.
Right.
But I was basically very quiet about my disbelief. I I I didn't bother anybody about it. If somebody said they were a Christian, I just said, "Oh, okay, cool." And if they asked me, I would generally say I don't go to church,
Right.
and that's all I would say. And they would assume maybe I was a Christian, but not know I was an atheist.
Right.
But as far
So
as my
yeah.
family goes, my mother primarily rejected me because I left Christ, because I left
Really.
Christianity. Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying that she didn't love me, but she thought that I was destined to hell. And then, of course, when uh, I did, uh, within the privacy of a discussion, she would ask me why I don't believe, and I would
Hmm.
try to discuss it with her, and of course, it would upset her. And so I realized, well, that's not something I'm going to bring up. But she would never let up on constantly telling me that I was hellbound and that I was a tool of the devil.
Yeah. Right.
And that
As if
happened
that's going to
until she
help you or
died.
something.
That she maintained that position until she died in 2009 from cancer.
Oh, sorry, dude.
Yeah, and I did everything I could for her, but I just was not the cookie cutter Christian she wanted me to be. And but it's kind of funny because I mean, kind of crazy actually. I was completely loyal to my family members, and friends, and
As you
uh,
should be.
was a law-abiding citizen, and did everything I could to help people around me. But
Yeah.
that still was not acceptable to her.
Well, you still
And
have to do it because
yeah,
even though they're not at that level as you are, they're still your family, regardless of what they think of you. And I'll always be behind my family, even the ones that
yes,
don't talk to me so much anymore because of my atheism, which is few. Most of my family are secular Jews, so it's not a big issue, right? So
yeah. Well, my family, primarily my siblings, uh, we all get along, and
that's great.
they understand what I am. It
Right.
was kind of rough at the first go, but my oldest sister, when she was 12, uh, realized she was an atheist, and
Mhm.
she didn't have to get raised in the same household. She lived in with her dad, who was basically kind of a liberal Christian and had no, she didn't force any religion or anything like that.
Liberal
Uh,
Christian. Wow, that's almost an oxymoron.
well, but there are a lot
Oh,
of them.
I know. It just sounds funny when you see all the stuff
It
that's
does
going
sound
on
funny,
down there
yeah.
with like
Compared
the
to what
conservatives.
compared to the conservatives, and yes, and in fact, the Southern Baptist Convention believes that all liberal Christians are fake Christians, that they're not real Christians, and that
Right.
they're not saved, and that they're all bound in hell, and that they're all tools of the devil.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's funny
Yeah,
how they seem to be okay with the fact that we're hellbound, right?
yeah, and it's kind of funny. They're not knocking at my door every day, trying to save my soul.
trying
And in
trying to
fact,
see the
my family members who think that I'm going to hell don't call me in the middle of the night worried that I'm going to go to hell.
right.
It never happens, does it?
No, no. Well, of
And
course, on my end, there's no real belief in a hell so much as a more of a purgatory sort of thing, or just
right,
existence after life without God. Not you're not among His kingdom and His and
uh,
which I wouldn't want to be anyways if He's as they say. So
no, in fact, I've had people say, and of course I know you've heard this before, but it just completely makes sense to me. Yahweh is a morally despicable deity if it did
agreed,
exist. And
agreed,
I
100%.
just, in fact, when I was a believer, I had my Jesus glasses on. And when I read the Bible, anything that I came across that was like that, I immediately concluded, oh, that's the Old Testament. But we have the New Testament. But the reality is that I didn't make the connection that the
Yeah.
God of the Old Testament is supposed to be the God of the New Testament.
Yeah, right. And that's something I always have to mention too in discussions with people that are believers that I know, is you can't discount the Old Testament, even though I hear them often say, well, we have a new covenant, but you're still dealing with the exact same God who did what he did in the past. So how is it suddenly what he
Yeah, but
decided,
the kind of the kind of funny thing is that Jesus never he never really said that the Mosaic law was not to be followed.
right. No, he encouraged them to follow the laws of God.
Yes, and of course, Paul comes along, and of course, I mean, my thoughts about the matters is even deeper than that, because I'm for the longest time I thought that there might have been at least a historical character known as Jesus.
Yeah.
But the more I research, particularly through Richard Carrier and all,
Yeah.
the less I think that might be the case. And as like Richard Carrier says, it's 1 in 3 chance, and it's still unlikely. And even if that's the case, it certainly isn't the individual as described in the Gospels.
Right.
So I tried to explain that to a family member not too long ago, whenever she kind of harked at me on Facebook, and it
Because
didn't
that's
go
the
well.
platform to do it, right?
Nah, it didn't go well for her, and of course she ran away. But but oh yes, but then again, I'll tell everybody that in 2000, between 2009 and 2010, I got a neurological disease, and became rather disabled, and eventually bedbound by 2010. And I'm still bedbound, but I'm under good medication now. But nonetheless, I had Christians come to my home and tell me that or insinuate on Facebook and other places that the reason why this was happening to me was because I rejected their God.
Of course, yeah.
That it was his punishment against me. And, after hearing enough of that, and also people coming in saying, how you doing? And then acting like they're there to help me, but then they start preaching at me in my own home. And I just got to the point where I just had enough of the shit. So I began watching videos and reading books. And by, I don't know, about 2011, 2012, I found the Atheist Experience and Aaron Ra. And, I just,
about the same timeline
Seth
for me.
Andrews. And I realized at that time, even though I had read the Four Horsemen, their books, Dennett and Harris and Hitchens and all that, something clicked. I said, man, I've got to apply this information, because I'm just tired of this shit, anti-evolutionist, anti-intellectualism.
It's insane.
Yeah, and it's so deep in our government. So
unfortunately,
yeah, and so I said, man, I got to do something. And of course, at the I started out lightly with assisting David Madison and John Loftus in promoting their books and discussing things with other people on their blog called Debunking Christianity. And then they say, hey man, you're a valuable voice. Go ahead and get heard. And so I started doing it on Facebook, which was not very acceptable to my family members and many of my friends. So I eventually decided to use Twitter. And by August of 2017, I started the Apetivist on Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
And I never thought that I would even, much less take off or have any kind of effect. I just wanted to tell my story and kind of explain why I thought Christianity was not true.
Bullshit.
And so, it's patently not true. And not only that, but I wanted to promote science and skepticism and critical thinking.
Right, of course. And it's a great platform to
and of course, humanism, as we said earlier, humanism.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm very much a humanist, and I think it shows in the things I do in my community and whatnot too, as well. So.
Yes, and the great thing about and as I said earlier with you in our private discussion, to me, atheism is just a byproduct of my skepticism, critical thinking, and questioning. But it's not it is not by any means the ultimate destination. The ultimate destination to me, just like you, is the humanism. And
atheism is just a position. Humanism is an actual,
humanism is a dynamic
way of life. Yeah.
Right. And if there's anything close to a religion that I have, it would be humanism. But then again, I don't hold to it like, every word of it is sacred and true or anything like that. It's just more aligns with what I think about how people should be treated and how we should go about our affairs in this world.
Of course. Well, humanism is a lot like atheism in that respect, is where we all have the same ideals when it comes to atheism or humanism, but a lot of us, we're all still very different people. Some of us still believe in a lot of the nonsense that's not necessarily religious, right? So,
right, which is kind of funny. You and I were discussing that earlier on our DM. There was a time shortly after I left Christianity, I was a deist for a little while until I read a book by Michael Martin called Atheism, A Philosophical Justification. And then I said, oh man, by the time I read that, I said, oh, I'm an atheist. And and by the way, I just want to shout out some of the books that helped lead me out of Christianity.
Great idea.
Yeah. The first one was Atheism, The Case Against God by George H. Smith. Now, these are old books, because let's keep in mind, this was 30 years ago, and there wasn't really that much available, even in some libraries that I went to. The other one is The Lectures of Colonel R.G. Ingersoll, Volume 1.
Yeah, I'm familiar with that one.
Yeah. And then What I Believe by Bertrand Russell, which really woke me up.
Russell's amazing.
Right. And then, of course, his dissertation of Why I Am Not a Christian, which completely woke me up. And then, of course, I became insatiable about more information, and I read Superstition in All Ages by John Messier, and then The Age of Reason and Common Sense by Thomas Paine. And those were the books, beside the Bible itself and the ludicrous theology found within, that is what led me out of Christianity.
That's fantastic. And this is some great books. And those ones are probably, like you were saying, some of the first that I remember coming out about atheism. And now there's tons of them, right?
Exactly. Well, the problem with me, of course, then, is that I had selective memory. So for a while there, I just kind of went my own way and did my own thing, and just, army and work and take care of family and friends, and, going out and having fun. But
the important stuff. Yeah.
Oh yeah, the important stuff. But I was easily swayed, I must admit, because I started watching the History Channel and Ancient Aliens and all this bullshit, and thought that it was I thought, wow, it's on the History Channel, it must be true. I was naive. I was naive, even though I was somewhat well read. I was naive, and I
Of
didn't.
course, I watched that shit too.
Yeah, I didn't apply my critical thinking, and but you know, it's kind of funny because I was so busy working 60, 70 hours a week that if it weren't for the fact that I became disabled, I don't think I would have ever had the time to further inspect my belief system and my views and perspective on science and reality. And that's, ultimately, it was critical thinking and skepticism that brought me to the point where I said, oh man, none of this shit is true. And, that's when it just kicked. It just kicked in, and I realized, hey, I believed quite a bit of bullshit most of my life.
Yep. Yeah. So did I, man. I think we all did. I mean,
right. Even Aaron Ross said he got involved in things like that.
Yeah. So I've actually talked to him about that sort of thing on one of his streams a little while back. We were going over that kind of thing. And I mean, you got to think. I mean, you're indoctrinated into whatever belief system the parents who raise you are. Because I'm an example of someone who was born to Catholics, but given up for adoption and raised in a Jewish home. So definitely your beliefs do come from whoever ends up raising you. And you work your way out of those kinds of beliefs, or if you're lucky enough to, in my opinion.
Right.
And then you end up following something else, because it's almost like it's like a pathway. Like, well, I don't believe this, but this sounds plausible. And then, of course, as time goes on, you learn more about science that, I did when I started getting into chemistry and stuff like that for what I do for a living. And you just sort of weed your way out of it, or you go through the different phases, ufology, whatever, auras and psychics and all that shit. And I believed that a lot of that stuff was at least plausible at some point.
Yeah, I thought it was plausible. Right.
Yeah, not 100% convinced.
Yeah, I didn't hang my hat on it, but I thought that it, and it just sounded so interesting that I kind of got pulled into it,
Yeah, even Wicca. I called myself a Wiccan for a few years, right? But of course, you try all that shit out, and none of it pans out, and you're like, okay, this is nonsense.
Well, I even dabbled in ideas of Buddhism and Taoism, particularly coming from the martial arts. I was really influenced by that kind of philosophy. Even though I was, when I was a fundamentalist, I avoided all of that aspect. But after I left Christianity, I thought, well, I'll just look at it. I kind of only lightly entertained those ideas. But if somebody asked me what I was philosophically, I would say, oh, I'm kind of like, if I really knew the person that I knew, it was okay for me to say this. I would say, oh, I'm kind of like a neo-Confucianist atheist, and I was really confused back then.
Yeah, well, Confucianism really is more of a philosophy thing, I think, than a belief system, really. But
yes, it is.
And there's some good stuff to take from it too.
Yes, the intellects have a lot of really good. I'm not saying Confucius was wrong about things. I'm just saying that and when I said neo-Confucianist, it means that I kind of combined some beliefs of Buddhism and Taoism and Confucianism in there, and a little Stoicism, and yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
I was a philosophical mutt.
I think I would have been able to call myself so into martial arts. I was in judo for 5 years, and taekwondo for a couple of years, and then karate for a couple of years, I guess.
Great.
So
yeah, I did. I did primarily the Chinese systems until I was 14. And then I started getting involved in, well, when I say Chinese, I mean Wing Chun, Tai Chi, Baguazhang, and Xingyi. And then by the time I got involved in progressive martial arts, I got into the teachings of Bruce Lee, Jungban, Jeet Do, Kali, Silat, and even did some Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And
that stuff's cool.
Yeah. So and Muay Thai. So, I would, quite frankly, I told everyone I was like a martial arts gypsy. And I would travel all over because I had no children and I wasn't married. I would travel all over studying under very famous instructors.
Very cool. I'm kind of jealous, actually.
Oh yeah, it was my life. I after the martial arts, and then when I left the army, I just dedicated myself completely to becoming an exemplary martial arts instructor.
Well, they definitely have a very interesting way of life, and a lot of good comes from it, I believe.
Yes, indeed, it does. And all my life, I was a very humble, compassionate individual. I protected individuals from harm, including myself, against bullies. And I, so there was a moral aspect to it, a philosophical aspect to it, way of life, kind of, way of viewing things and doing things and being respectful and polite and calm.
Sure, those are
the things that I still to this day I believe in. I hold central to my character.
Right, and it's very nature based as well. A lot of the stuff that they teach.
Indeed, it is. Yes, and it's kind of funny because here I come from some really capability to do a lot of violence, but I'm probably the least violent person you'll ever meet.
Yeah, well, what's funny? I found the same. You were talking about being what's the word? Bullied.
Yes.
I was as well. When I was a lot smaller as a young child, I didn't blossom into this behemoth of a man that I became until quite late in my teens. Well, probably about 15, 16. I started getting taller and bigger.
Right.
And I ended up being that same kind of guy where I ended up standing up for the little guy because I was one of them. And I would stand in the way. Yes. And I actually, I got my ass handed to me by better fighters than me at the time, but protecting people that would have been even wiped more out than I was.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I made a lot of, quite frankly, I made a lot of fast friends by coming to their aid against bullies. And, I'm only 5'8" and weigh, back then I weighed only about 185 pounds, but I was solid muscle and, very strong and very fast. So, and I must admit,
speed kills.
I would like to say that at some point in my life, somebody would have kicked my ass, but I was lucky enough that none of that ever happened to me. I was always able to beat the other guy, our guys. And I've been in situations where I've had to fight up to 3 to 4 people at one time just by myself.
Yeah,
and I was kind of been there too. Really hard in tough neighborhoods. I come from a very poor family, and we didn't have much choice about where we went to school or where we lived.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Oh, I got to answer a question. Secular asked if I ever took Krav Maga, and that's actually one that I forgot to mention.
Oh yeah, Krav Maga, yeah.
In my couple of years living in Israel, I did take it for a few months, so I know some of the basics for that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of influenced by Wing Chun and Muay Thai and Jiu-Jitsu. It's like a hybrid system.
It is. It actually is. It takes some of the better elements from all of them and combines them.
Yes, it does. Yes.
And there's a few actually created moves from Israelis as well. I actually met the guy who was one of the instigators of starting up Krav Maga in Israel for the military. And he was an 87-year-old man teaching us how to do specific moves. And this guy, who was faster than lightning, was taking down, strong teenagers like that. Like it was nothing, right?
Yeah.
I'm like, holy crap, I'm not going up against this guy. Forget it. And he's
Well,
like 87 years old.
I can only imagine if I had been able to physically continue. Just wow, yeah, because I was in pretty high demand at the time before I became disabled. I was lining up national seminars and workshops, and was even considering doing a instructional video series, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I had I won't mention the name of the organization, but I also was a head of a martial arts organization, and I had representatives all the way in Europe, from Texas to California to New York, in Philadelphia, and in Great Britain, and in Sweden. So
wow, fantastic.
Yeah. So I was, but
now you can write your memoirs.
well, yeah. Well, I got to tell you that not too long ago, people were asking me on Facebook why I didn't continue counseling or just even providing, tips and things like that. And I was like, you can go to my students for that,
Yeah.
I'm more involved in, my activism now. And frankly,
And thank you for
when
that.
you can no longer do something, it's kind of depressing to keep focusing on it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I can see that for sure.
Yeah,
But
I'm not feeling sorry for myself in any way. I'm just simply saying that.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
And not only that, but I think what I'm doing now is a little more important.
I agree. Well,
at least from my
what you did before was important too.
They're equally important, but I just feel more drawn to this activism than I have ever to the martial arts. And I love the martial arts with man, I was a maniac about it.
I hear you. Yeah, I was very much into it too when I was doing it. Life choices took me away from it, but that's neither here nor there. But
right.
Yeah, I'm with you though. The atheist activism is, or just humanism activism, all of it combined. It's very important right now because of the stuff that's being thrown at us. Right?
Yeah, I'm just completely blown away at what's happening in our country.
I know.
We've been hijacked by evangelicals and dominionists, and and conservatives. It's just and I was a conservative, and then became a libertarian for a while, but then it was actually John W. Loftus that talked me into. He didn't want to. He just convinced me that liberalism was the better way, and that's what I did.
As long as it's not too extreme, because some of them are, you get too far into something, you climb down that rabbit hole, and you become a whack job, just as wacky as the other side. But I came to
see that it was counterproductive for me to hold any kind of conservative type beliefs. They weren't conducive with my goals.
Okay, sure.
And I just I just see the divisionism created by it, and I just didn't want to be associated with it. And not only that, but I'm not saying that all libertarians are selfish, bad people or anything like that, but it is an inherently selfish type of ideology.
Yeah, agreed.
And it's neither God nor Beast. He's on YouTube. Made some wonderful videos about Ayn Rand and libertarianism, and pointing out the flaws in the ideology.
Well, I think ideology has its merits, but some of them are far worse than others in every other way. So
yes, I agree. Yes,
I tend to take the best from everything I do know about and try to apply it. as being a humanist.
Right. And I really, the only reason why I align myself with liberalism is because it tends to promote the values that I possess. So, I mean, quite frankly, if the truth were on the opposite side, I would go to the opposite side. Or if I felt more aligned to the opposite side, I would go to the opposite side.
I think that's a better way to put it.
But that's just not the case. And anyway, and it's really sad what's happening to our country. But I like to implore to people that believe that Donald Trump is the only hope for America, as expressed by most GOPers that I know. He is not. America is more than Trump.
Oh, yeah, that's an understatement.
Yeah, I thank goodness it is, because if it wasn't, I would want to move somewhere. In fact, I've had people say, "Hey, come and live with me in Canada, or come to England." And I'm like, well, that all sounds great, but I have family here and I have friends.
Yeah,
and I swore when I swore that oath in the military to defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic, I still take that as my oath, and so I feel kind, I feel driven to or motivated to express my views about the Constitution and the rights of Americans, equality and yeah.
Absolutely. We have something quite similar here, the Charter of Rights, and it's very similar to yours.
I mean, yeah.
With the friendly neighbors from up north, right?
I love you guys, and I mean,
sorry a lot. Hey, sorry.
In fact, the other day I stated how I stood on the side of Canadians who are boycotting American products and things. I don't blame them for what Trump is doing. There has to be consequences for what he's doing. He's trying to make an enemy of our allies.
Yeah, and he's befriending your old enemies.
That's why I think I kind of think that. No, I know. I think it's going to come out that Putin has something really bad and gritty on him.
Maybe.
Maybe, yeah. But otherwise, I just wonder what kind of motivation he's operating under to do all these things. But
I have no idea.
I think he's a narcissist beyond all things. Yes.
I don't even think that's in question.
Yeah.
Because he definitely is. I mean, if you look at him throughout his entire existence of history of being a celebrity or whatever,
right?
It shines through.
Yeah. Yeah. To be honest, I was really behind Bernie, but when I realized that his chances were lessened, I went ahead and voted for Hillary. And I just didn't want Trump in. And when he came in, and I knew there were going to be problems, but I didn't know it would become this bad. And I'm afraid that before it's all over, it might be much worse.
You're going to pray.
No, I don't pray, but I certainly hope that against reality that it won't happen. But I think he has set us back at least a decade, maybe even more.
What was I just reading today that he did? Shit. Oh yeah, work safety stuff. He rolled back some work safety stuff, I think, or something.
First thing he does on Labor Day is attack a union. Thank you. Yes. A guy who's affiliated with the unions and promotes worker rights and things like that, and he attacks them on Twitter.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yes, it is.
I'm a member, actually, at where I work. I'm a member of the health and safety, whatever club. I can't remember the word. Yeah. But you get what I mean. And I'm one of the higher ups in there. And of course, they sent us for the schooling for that as well, which is great. Where I work is great because any schooling you do want to take that will benefit your job position, they'll pay for it.
Oh, man, that's wonderful.
Fantastic, right? And so I work for a company called GFL Environmental, which means Green for Life. And as many who've watched my videos on a regular basis know that that's what I do. I'm a chemist, and I also recycle used antifreeze into brand new antifreeze. So,
wow.
And it keeps it out of the environment so that, I mean, animals and stuff don't drink it. But we use an additive called Bitrex, which we put into it so it's not as sweet, because glycol can be a sweet flavor, obviously, because it's a it comes from glycerin type thing. So, yeah, so I make sure that they don't drink it. I keep that stuff out of the environment. We have them send us back, in great big trucks. We get tons of it in, 11, 12, 13,000 liters at a time. And then drums come in, and I test all the stuff to make sure there's a high enough concentration of glycol left in it. And then we just send it through high heat distillation, and blammo, we get brand new glycol, add some distilled water to it, and then I add all the chemical compounds and the coloring, and boom, we have our own brand actually now called EcoFreeze. So
wow, that's magnificent. That is just great.
I do everything that I can.
I'm all for green industries, man. I totally am.
Sure. Look what's happening to the world out there.
Yeah.
These heat waves aren't by accident, for fuck's sakes, right?
We have and the sad thing is the GOP is they deny climate change.
Oh, they're idiots.
They're complete fucking idiots. Yeah.
I mean, sure, part of it is cyclical, as it has been for millions of years, but the percentage increase that we recognize is human caused. So
it's human. Yes, it's man-made climate change, but they, no, they know better than whatever 95% of the consensus of scientists.
Right.
Yeah, there's a certain arrogance. It's like creationists who think they know more than experts in biology.
Oh my God. Yeah. And they never ever get past you never see like King Crocoduck, for example. You never see a crocodile and a duck,
right.
You never see something change into, guys, that's
not how it works. Yeah. Yeah.
Something called the frequencies, right?
Well, I must admit, when I was a believer and a creationist, I avoided all discussion about evolution because I was taught that it was of the devil and that designed to lead people away from Jesus.
Right.
And of course, there's an inherent issue in it, and that is if the story about Adam and Eve isn't true, then there was no original sin, and hence no need for Jesus, and no need for some kind of propitiated sacrifice to a wrathful God.
Right.
So we have a problem here. So when one of the first things I did when I left Christianity was I was curious, is this evolution true? And I began researching it. And within a year to 2 years time, I was like, yeah, it's true.
And then Aaron Ra came around and said,
yeah, in fact, I the only thing I knew about evolution primarily except for a few books that I had read from the library, I learned from Aaron Ra. And then later, of course, through my own research. And then, of course, when I got on Twitter, Jackson Wheat and
Jackson's awesome.
RJ, James Donald.
Yeah.
Was, and wow. And, of course, by that time I had already read Stephen Jay Gould and about punctuated equilibria and but yeah, and in fact, Peter from Gonna Go For It said he was the guy that talked me into going onto any kind of YouTube shows because because I was really hesitant to do it because I don't know why, but I maybe it's because of all these years of isolation by myself and only my wife.
that might be, yeah.
Yeah, that's probably why.
You get in that mindset, right?
Yeah, I got in that mindset.
But I'm
Yeah, so
glad
he
you
talked
changed
me
your
out of it.
mind, because the
Peter
more
talked me out of
voices
it.
we have,
Yeah.
right?
Peter
Good for
said, "Hey,
Peter.
your voice is important. You need to kind of open yourself up to other people." So
Yeah, agree. I think the more of our voices that are out there, then the more messages are going to be heard. And who knows, as a collective, we could change many minds, right? And
well, I've had
that's why I do these.
since the time I've been on between Facebook in some private groups and here in Twitter, I've had a few people tell me that I was one of the individuals that helped influence them to leave their fundamentalist beliefs.
Isn't
And
that a great feeling?
I did not say, "Did you become an atheist?" Or I
Yeah,
was happy with the fact that they just left a fundamentalist belief.
yeah,
You know,
yeah, yeah, yeah. It can take some. Yeah, some people change over almost like swapping clothes. For them, it's that easy. Some
yeah.
people, it takes many years. Like we were talking about, it's a pathway out of
For
there.
me, it took many years.
Hmm.
Many
Me
many
too.
years. Yeah,
Me
yeah.
too,
And for
for
me,
the most part.
it was the fear. Primarily, I just it was several things. I didn't want to go to hell if it did
Yeah,
exist, and
I've never been a hell believer. So
yeah. Well, in my case, I was. I
yeah,
was taught it from the age of 6 years old up, which is kind of damaging to the psyche of a child. Uh,
yeah. It's why I
Also,
almost liken it to child abuse.
I kind of I think indoctrination is child abuse, even though it's they intend well. My family intended well, and I love them, but I don't throw it back on them in that case because they too were indoctrinated, and
Of course, yeah. You can't
I
hold
understand it.
anger for
Yeah,
that, right? Yeah,
but nonetheless, that plus I didn't I if my family members and my loved ones were going to be in heaven, I didn't want to be somewhere where they weren't. Um, Jesus was supposed to be such a great guy. Um, the eye have, the ear has not heard, nor the eye have seen all that God has stored up for those who love Him.
yeah,
Boy, that's a big carrot. So
yeah.
you add all that together, and to leave it and say, no, we live in a materialistic natural universe, and there are physical causes and reasons for things, and we are an evolved primate. That just
Yep.
didn't have the same ring at the time for me that Christianity did.
Well, yeah, I totally understand that.
Yeah, and
Uh,
yeah, and of course, I got to tell you, I wasn't incredibly bright. I paid attention to certain things. I did kind of well in school. I was
yeah, me too.
A student and graduated high school with honors in journalism. But
Hmm.
uh,
That's cool.
but
Well, that should help you in your
right,
activism.
that helped me. But I was still the whole time I was a fundamentalist, and I avoided learning anything about science. In fact, in my household, PBS was the devil's station because Carl Sagan was on it, and if uh, if the if Madeline Murrow O'Hara was on Donahue, I had to turn the TV off or change the channel. Uh, certain shows that
Yeah.
that showed a woman's partial bust or something like that, it was considered sinful. I didn't watch an R-rated movie until I was in my late 20s. Um,
Whoa, really?
and I didn't even have a girlfriend until I was 17, and um,
Wow.
barely even kissed her. And I didn't even have sex until I was 23.
Holy cow.
Yeah,
Wow,
I
you were
was.
holding out.
Yeah, yeah. After I left Christianity, I one of the first things I wanted to do was to have sex, and that's not the reason why I left Christianity, of course, but it was one of the benefits.
One of the
After I
freedoms.
realized I know we're under these rules and expectations, and I didn't have some God googling about everything I did. Because I got to tell you, I was really stunted. I was stunted psychologically and intellectually, and I was
Yeah.
stunted emotionally, and I didn't know shit about women. And
Yeah.
when I got in the army, I met when I was in Turkey for 2 years, and I got this beautiful Turkish girlfriend who spoke 4 languages, and she also
Awesome.
was an atheist. Um, and of course, her family were Muslim, and they didn't like me. They didn't want me to be around her, but she saw me nonetheless. And of course, she taught me everything there was about getting it on and everything else. Thank goodness for her, because without her, I probably wouldn't have figured my way around the female body or anything like that, for that matter. Uh, I was really I was really kept in the dark about
you know
sexuality,
those Muslims, though, right?
and I was
They
yeah,
like their virgins.
I was told, Neil, I was made to feel ashamed about my sexuality. Uh,
Really?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Masturbation is a sin.
that's shitty.
Masturbation is a sin. Looking about a woman with lust is the same as committing adultery. Um, your
Yeah.
mind is supposed to be pure. It was really hard for me growing up, going through that and liking girls, or having an appreciation for them. I couldn't express it, and I felt really bad about having any kind of lustful thoughts or anything like that. And when I reached puberty, and any young boy will try masturbation, and but I always felt guilty about it and felt really bad, and would pray and cry about it, and um, yeah.
That's man. See, I never really had that kind of. I think I lost my virginity when I was 14,
Lucky bastard.
somewhere around there. Yeah, I want to say I didn't have a choice.
Oh, oh,
Yeah, she said, "You're not getting away from me," and then the next thing I
oh,
know, I was like, "Holy crap, this is awesome!"
oh goodness, that's great.
Yeah, yeah,
Well, I just I knew nothing, and I I mean, I don't mean to offend anybody here, but I didn't even know what a clitoris was. Uh, I
it's a
had
little
no,
man in the boat.
I had no idea. Uh, and I was I was just really stunted. And
Well, that's a result of your belief system. So
yeah,
breaking away from it will
yeah,
help
it's a
in you
great liberation.
realizing.
Just
Yeah,
like, yeah, like, in fact, who was it that said it? But nonetheless, it's, you know, if the, if the human mind is to achieve greatness, it must be free.
mm-hmm.
And I, I really didn't understand what it meant to be a free thinker for quite a while, until
Mm-hmm.
I found certain books on this subject. And particularly when I went back to read Ingersoll's books. And,
Mm-hmm.
and then I was like, oh, wow, this is great, because, it took me years, even after leaving Christianity, to kind of shirk off a lot of the indoctrination and the way I viewed the world and how I responded to people. And uh, yeah, I had to find myself. I had to really find myself. Now, I will admit, I did go. I was in the Gulf War, and I
Wow.
didn't have good experiences there. And I
Do you
was
have
treated. I was
PTSD?
treated for PTSD,
Yeah.
and but I got through that. And but it also taught me a lot of hard realities about life.
Oh,
and
being
it
over there
actually
myself, yeah.
it deepened my humanitarianism and made me more compassionate about
Hmm.
people.
Hmm. Let me be clear. I was never in the Gulf War. I was here when that was going on. But about a decade earlier, I spent a little over 2.5 years living in Israel and traveling around the area, everywhere from Spain to Greece to Italy, all around Lebanon,
Wow.
Egypt, everything like that. So I did a lot of travel back then. And some of the atrocities that I saw just going around there, and
Okay.
we have them here too, but it's like a different culture, so it's a different way of looking at them, I guess.
Yes.
And I think being there at the age of 17, 18, that's when I decided that, like, the stuff that I've seen while being here, being still somewhat of a believer, I pretty much, after being there, gave up on the whole God thing, because I said, there's no fucking way that there is this God that has been described to me as being this omniscient, omnipresent, omnibenevolent, all that nonsense.
Yeah.
I don't even think a being like that could actually exist just
No,
by its
it's a
definition
logical
alone.
impossibility.
Right.
Omniscience precludes omnipotence.
Mm-hmm.
Omnipotence precludes omnibenevolence.
Omnipresence.
Yeah. It's logically incoherent. And
That kind of a being. If there was a being like that, he would have absolutely no use for us. He would see so far evolved way past what we are.
Yeah, I don't.
It
Yeah,
would be like bacteria. It'd be like us giving a crap about bacteria on the floor that you can't even
exactly.
see.
One of my arguments that I picked out when I began my activism was, why would a perfect God need anything?
You're right.
Why would he even need to create anything?
Why
If
would he
he's
even have
perfect?
regrets after doing it?
Yeah, and then have regrets. Yeah, which is ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, when I was a Christian, I never thought about these things. I was just, you just accept it unquestionably. It is what it is, what it is, and there's nothing else aside from that. And to doubt it is a sin. And
Which is why they tend not to.
right, don't question.
Yeah.
Which really pissed me off. Like I said, when I started asking those questions, and eventually they said, "Quit asking questions. It's unfaithful of you." And I was like, that kind of angered me. It angered me. Yeah.
Yeah. Understandable, for sure. I mean, any belief system that tells you not to question, you should immediately be wary of.
Right. One of the things that really jumped out at me was when, was it Thomas Jefferson that said, why would he give us this rational mind and then expect for us not to use it?
Right. Yeah.
And worse, that he would punish us for it.
Yeah, exactly. An eternity of torture for a finite crime.
For finite crimes, right. And yet God is love. That just doesn't make any damn sense.
It doesn't make any sense at all.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense.
It's counterintuitive.
As bad as the Old Testament is, hell, the concept, the doctrine of hell, even though some liberal Christians don't believe that it's an actual place or anything like that.
Right.
But the original concept of hell, as taught by the Catholic Church and early Christianity, was a literal place.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a stick and carrot religion.
Mm-hmm.
So but that's the most inhumane doctrine ever thought of by any mind on earth.
But it works well to control people.
Yes, it does. Yes, it did. It controlled me for 23 years.
Any of you guys, I'm going to check the comments here. Oh, we got lots of people hanging out. Nadine and Unholy Mole. Christy Santiago, who I've also interviewed. Nadine, I'll be interviewing soon too. Beach Price is here. There's quite a few people. Does anyone have any questions that they would like to ask Apetivist? Because we're actually past an hour, but I'm very much enjoying our conversation. So if you that's fine. I'm okay going over a little bit if you're still up for maybe answering a couple of questions. Oh, Christy's got to take off. She's got to do a haircut.
I literally, my sister comes by every once in a while, and I get on my wheelchair, and she takes us out to like a small restaurant or something, and that's it. And I mean, which I think is wonderful, but with the exception of that, I would never get out. With the exception of my VA hospital doctor meetings, appointments. So.
Well, if I could, I'd build a special vehicle where we could easily load you into it, and I'd take you everywhere.
Oh, that would be great. Yeah, make sure it can fly. I love flying.
Okay, so Nadine Callan is asking for her boyfriend Josiah, who's your favorite Ninja Turtle?
I've always said this, and I'll say it again. This guy follows me no matter where I go. I'm just waiting. He's great. Leonardo, because I have an artistic spirit. I was involved in art. That was one of the great joys that I had, even as a young boy, was just drawing and sketching things.
Well, plus he's the leader.
Oh, he is? Oh, I didn't know that. Yeah.
To be honest,
I don't know much about the. I just remember watching the little cartoon when I was a kid, and believe it or not, we watched it until someone said in our church that the Ninja Turtles were satanic, and then I was not allowed. I'm not kidding you. I'm not kidding you. I was not allowed to watch it after that.
Shit, man! I had the very first edition of those comics when they first came out. I was living in Israel, and my mom shipped them out because she shipped all stacks of them out to me every month.
Just to let you know, and I don't mean to be, I love my family. Don't get me wrong, but I wasn't allowed to bring certain things into the house or to have certain books and things like that. Too many things are of the devil.
Of course. And Chrissy said she'd bring over the stankiest dank ever rolled and share it with you.
Oh, well,
she was near you.
Hey, tell Chrissy this. I love her so much.
You never made me that promise, Christy. What's going on? And I'm the danky guy.
That's sweet. Guy? But here's the funny thing, y'all. In all my life, I've never even tried marijuana or smoked a cigarette. And I've been
cigarettes you don't.
Yeah, I know. I've been so health conscious and so involved in the martial arts and everything that I was one of these purists that, and I still am, and I became diabetic in 2012 and because of my lack of ability to be active, but I've got it under control now. My numbers are actually pre-diabetic and I'm really disciplined about what I eat and what I drink and
which is a good idea.
How I consume things. Yeah.
So Beej wants to know when you get your new laptop.
I already have it, Beej.
Yeah, he's already got it, Beej. There you go.
Yeah. Hey, I'll tell you what. I'll send you a picture of it. I'll let you know. It didn't take long for Matt and Miss Snarky and everybody. Thank you, Atheist Crusade.
I remember
that you guys that helped me get it. Right.
Yeah, that was fucking fantastic. Yeah, as I believe I exclaimed.
Blown away. Yeah. In tears afterwards. What a wonderful group of people.
It's okay, Christy. I get some of the best shit in the world right here in BC. So it's if I'm ever in your area, I'll bring some of the good stuff.
Oh, and by the way, I'm not against it. I feel like if anybody wants to do a drug or something, that's up to their own. They can do it.
Oh,
whatever.
Sure.
As long as you're not out driving completely stoned or something, I'm fine with it.
Yeah, I don't do that.
Do your thing, babe.
I've lost a couple of relatives to being under the influence of one thing or another.
Yeah, I have too.
So I tend to stay away from that kind of thing and encourage other people not to do the same.
Well, I got to tell you, in the past, when I drink, I've only been literally inebriated like twice in my life. That's because I didn't know what I was doing when I was drinking. But when I had my first drink when I was 23, and but I was very conservative about how I drank and only had like 2 or 3 beers in one setting, and because there was something about it's not that I did not trust myself, it's just that I did not like the idea of not being in control.
Right, sure, and I hate that too about that.
And also
to that point.
because I I studied the martial arts for so long, I wanted my situational awareness to be present at all times.
Okay.
Not that I was
Makes sense.
paranoid, but I was also raised in really hard neighborhoods, so
Mm-hmm.
I kind of developed that, and it just became a part of my personality.
Well, not only that, losing control is kind of a freaky thing too, right? So we want to be not there as much as possible.
Yeah, yeah,
right? So,
right.
or whatever, you know what I mean?
Yeah, man. Yeah, I mean, hey, if you're
I'm
in
not,
your,
I'm not, I'm not the most
the way I
articulate
look
guy.
at it is like, if you're alone and you want to just tear your house up, do it. But if it involves hurting another person, don't do it.
Yeah, I know. Yeah,
So
yeah. Invest in a fucking punching bag or something.
yeah,
Or
right.
even one of those old. I had one as a kid. Those old blow up Bozo the Clown dolls that you punch them, they bounce and they come back. Right?
Yeah.
I was kicking the crap out of that almost daily from being picked on at school.
Oh
But
yeah.
yeah. So why don't we bring this one to a close? And if you're up for it, we could do an after party for a little bit. Anyways, I do have my buddy Daryl is turning 60 today, so we're gonna
Oh,
have a
that's
little
wonderful.
celebration for him. So
Wait, did you say 60 or 16?
60, 60.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. He's an old guy.
By the way, I'm 52.
Are you? Oh, you're just ahead of me. I'm 51, and I'll be
Okay.
52 in October. So,
All right.
so we're
Sure,
literally almost the same
fine.
age.
Yeah, why not?
All right. Great. Then what I'll do is I'll hang up on this one, and then I'll send you a new link. And whoever else wants to join, who should let me know in the chat right now, so I know who to send links to, and we'll carry on for a little bit longer.
Thanks, Neil. Thanks, everybody.
Well, thank you for coming on, man, because you had a great story to tell, and I'm glad I got to share that with lots of people. Share your story, and if it helps anyone, then we've done our job, haven't we?
I hope so.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, thanks again, Apetivist, for coming on, and we'll carry on with an after party. I'll send people who do want to join us a link momentarily once I set one up, and you can expect one as well, Apetivist. And remember, guys. They call it faith because it's not knowledge.